What's up? My name's Jason. This is another episode of Lost in Thought today. I'm gonna try and do this. I've been posting videos between this channel and my other channel that I have that are just my other one just kind of shows you my eclecticity, and where this one it's more or less I just share my thoughts and hopefully inspire others to think a little more critically. I deal with high functioning autism. I have Asperger's. Um, I've had my ups and downs like most people do with this type of living, being a neurodivergent and not a neurotypical. Part of I guess you could say part of my drive is I spend most of my time, in essence, just trying to figure out humans and the different habits, the different subject matters, all this shit that's been going on around us. And even though I don't do things on a traditional standpoint that most people would say through social anthropology, I do things in my own little chaotic way. And then with this, I hope, when I share my thoughts, even the things I've learned, and on this channel, I'll even sit down when it comes to certain subjects. I'll actively sit down like I am now, at my computer, and depending on something, I'll search it right here, and so that you can see that I'm not, I'm not necessarily pulling shit out my ass. This is what I do on a daily and regular and a constant, and a lot of it is not specific or subject specific, anything like that. The moment my curiosity focuses on something, I will look it up, whether it's simple or complicated. When it comes to what we see in our public medias at all levels, whether it be, mainstream or alternative, the information that I get from those things, I go and look up myself. And a lot of times you won't, when I go to pull something up, you'll see me pull up corresponding articles or something to what I'm talking about. Or you will definitely see me pull up links that go directly to a medical thing if it's something that has to do with medical shit. Government pages, instead of going to like Fox or CNN. So if there's a law that a state governor was putting into place or was removing, I would go look up that law. I wouldn't wait for... I don't look for a journalist to translate what it is for me, because then I have to trust that guy isn't going to be... or that guy or that lady isn't going to be biased and start pulling some shit and giving their own twist, because we're seeing it every fucking day, especially on social media. There's a reason why I have certain presidents, for most part, blocked or muted, because the moment I see their shit come onto my feed, it sets me off. I can't help it, because a lot of those posts that I see are intended to trigger certain people. They're intended to gaslight, and so I try to avoid a lot of that, because I recognize that depending on what it is, I become very passionate, and then it's difficult to know the difference between being aggressive and passionate, or even being angry and passionate. And I know a lot of people see, even in my videos, I'm a bit awkward, a bit strange. You might see me fiddle with things at times. You might just see me, just kind of, like I'm doing, rock a little bit. I'll pace. There's a lot of things I'll be doing that I do in my videos while I'm sharing my thoughts, in hopes that it not necessarily changes your mind or anybody else's mind. I don't want to influence people in that sense. The only thing I think that I hope to do in that, I guess you could say, in that sense of influencing, is to get people to start thinking for themselves, think a little more critically and more logically, not so much emotionally. I wonder if this is, there we go, a little bit clearer at least. But this channel is basically to touch on not just my various different interests that I have, but things that find themselves in my focus. And a lot of it has to do with politics, or you'll see religion, you'll see alternative energies, you'll see sustainabilities here and there. You'll see me talk. You'll see where I reference, film in movies on occasion, sometimes more than others. A mix of things. I tried the whole little movie review thing, and I do suck at that because I might have the stuff to be able to make the videos look cool, but I'm not here to make really cool looking videos. If that makes sense. I'm like some of these other channels that you see, they're just here to talk to you, share their thoughts, might even share their feelings, those types of things. But instead of trying to influence how you think, on certain things, like getting you to side with me on specific subjects, I just want people to start thinking things through, thinking more critically, and not just think about how it might affect them, but even affect the other people around them. Whether you agree with somebody or not, if you truly don't want to see others have to suffer, whether you agree with them or not, then you've got to some degree, start thinking about other people too, not just yourselves. You got to think about where certain situations might lead. What are the good and bad to it? Is there, can people say that there's a gray area in there? And then if there is, what are those things that might fit in a gray area, but then you find... Because, it's like with the story of the Pandora box, without going into it in detail. When it was open, the only thing that came out of it that was questionably good was hope. And the thing with hope is a duality. It's a gray zone, because you can hope for the best or you can hope for the worst. So, lost in thought today, or lit, a lot of it is not to necessarily challenge the norm or to influence others to, say, jump on a bandwagon. I don't want to be driving a bandwagon. I just want people to be able to freely think for themselves, think about the outcomes. Think about what they're arguing. Is it valid? Because sometimes, whether you think it's valid or not, that comes into the ballpark of it's your own bias being played into that. It's being able to look at something, and even though you don't agree with it, you don't like it, you might detest it or be disgusted by it, it's the ability to be able to stand in those other shoes and think about, okay, how's this not only affecting them, how's this good, how's this bad from that point of view. I'm one of those people that, even though at times I can get really emotional, it just depends on what it is and all that. With family, I can get really emotional. Other times, I'm one of those people you can't tell when I'm telling you a joke at times, you can't tell if I'm being serious or not. I tend to be a little bit stone faced or uh, sometimes expressionless. Um, a lot of times, with these videos, I'm still processing what I'm thinking and what I'm trying to say, and then you can tell obviously when I'm speaking a little slower and trying to pick my words properly. But I'm one of those that I've never lost my childlike curiosities. There's at times that I have to what do you call it? I have to limit myself in the sense of when it comes to the natural world of things, because I get curious and I'll ask questions at times, and this is why I don't like to ask a lot of questions. There's two reasons why to that, actually. One was in elementary school, I used to get in trouble for talking out of place in class, and a lot of times I was asking either questions or asking my fellow students questions, and it would be during the teacher talk, and then I'd get in trouble. So and that was back then when teachers were allowed to spank you, and that lasted mainly through first and second grade. Then third grade we had moved, and it was a little bit different. I mean, if you go by race, I was one of the minorities because my dad was in the military, and at the time, the neighborhood we lived in, I was one of the few white kids. So for me, I didn't actually notice that shit until people like kept trying to point it out to me, and it's like, yeah, so what? So I mean, growing up, I grew up more around people of color and of other ethnicities than I did of white people outside of my own family. And then when we basically settled in Oregon City, which I don't live there anymore, but the school we were going to there, and I because I ended up back in the school that. So after first and second grade, we moved up into Washington, up to the military base up there, for about a year or so, and then my father retired, and we moved right back to the house that we'd owned at the time, in Oregon City. So I ended up back in that school that I got my ass whooped during first and second grade. I'd get stuffed in these little, they're like these cardboard drums, like a barrel, like what you'd probably keep like, you know, anybody who's probably worked in uh, a spice and seasoning type warehouse. They keep your spices and seasonings like your garlic salt or your basil and all that shit, and it's where they package them. But before they package them, they're in these great big, like really thick, heavy duty cardboard like barrels. It's like a 55-gallon drum. But then when I was in school, the teacher had two, and obviously a little hole type thing cut out so that a kid can go in there. They had a little piece of carpet put in there on the bottom, and it would be turned to the wall, so you couldn't see the teacher, you couldn't see the students, and all you could do was listen. And you were stuffed in this thing, and you would have to sit there throughout class. The only time you get to get out is when you go to lunch. You might have recess, which most of the time they never kept you from recess. I never really had that issue in elementary school. But then afterwards, you come back into class and you get stuffed right back in that fucking thing. And so I went through that through first and second grade, and then of course moved third grade, came back to the same school. And so in that part of the school district, yeah, it was a lot of mainly like white kids, with parents who were operating or on farms or working as, I guess you call them engineers. They were working in production plants and stuff like that around Portland area. So a lot of them were managing, restaurants, just typical middle class people. And then we had a lot of the Latino kids in there too. We had a few. And then by middle school, that's all we really had. We had, you had your white kids, and then you had your the larger community of Latino kids, and then during that time, we could probably count. We probably had a dozen kids from the black neighborhoods and shit like that from Portland that had moved out there that were there. We didn't really have a whole lot, but most everybody was either Latino, and then you had your white group of kids, and then of course you had your kids from the black community. But we didn't have all the problems back then like you're seeing now. A lot of people got along and all that. I learned later in life after taking a test thing on finding out whether or not you have a bias towards people of color or not, and I ended up having a bias towards white people. But a lot of that has to do with the fact that I grew up as basically a minority within the community I was in. I grew up around mostly people of color, so I mean, for me, it's just normal. So, when I speak of race, I try to be careful about it on these things, because I don't want to say things that are out of line or misconstrued to being racist on purpose or anything like that. Because I think people are people. I don't care what you look like. I don't care necessarily who you pray to or who you go home to. It's whether or not you're a good person or not to me. And I'm one of those people. I can be too trusting with people at times, but I don't trust. I always keep an arm's length different distance from people until I'm actually comfortable around you, because of a lot of the things that I've dealt with in life, especially dealing with high spectrum ASD and not knowing it through most of my life until I get diagnosed as an adult, and finding out this is why I got picked on a lot. This is why I dealt with certain things and how I dealt with certain things. Those types of stuff. And I've always been one of those people. I whether you want to call it sitting there going stoner logic and people just sitting around getting baked and getting in these really deep conversations. I've always been that kind of kid growing up, with or without the cannabis. This is what I've been prescribed to as medication. I take gabapentin also for my neurofibromatosis on top of it, and then there's another one. My doctor was really good about making sure that I got something that I could take, because I couldn't. There was over the years there wasn't a medication that I could take that I wasn't hypersensitive to. And I had to be extremely low dose, worked into what I'm taking right now. That in combination of this and making sure there's no inherent bad reactions between the two. But this channel is, as I've been saying, it's a place where I can get my thoughts out about basically everyday things, whether it's current events, past events, or just random shit. It's also where I've been saying, I'm hoping it inspires other people to do the same. Reading, getting your sources of information shouldn't be from a specific thing just because you're being biased over something being, left, right, statist, or whatever. It's making sure that where you go to get your information is from somewhere that those biases and those opinions are not being fed into. It's just straight up basically the facts, or the factual information on it, or the actual law per se. That's the best example I could give. It's like, if you see on the news on both sides, oh, so and so's doing this to this law, it's gonna do this, and it's gonna fuck everybody, blah 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 blah. And then instead of just going and looking up an alternative news source, I just go and look up that law. I want to see what it is that they put in place or changed, and is it really what the media is saying? That's really the only and best way to know that you're getting actual facts. And then from there, yeah, pay attention to actions. I mean, we've all had enough of politicians making all these promises and never following through. I mean, even now, I find it funny, but at the same time, it's gotten to be old bullshit where you keep seeing people making posts. Oh, this president needs to be in prison. That president needs to be in prison. That senator or that governor. It's not going to happen. Get real. We live in a two-tiered system where if you're not famous in any form, if you're not a big influencer on social media, you're not famous via, say, Hollywood or TV, music, sports, you're not a politician or some big name doctor or scientist or some shit like that, justice will not work for you the way it works for them. It just won't happen. So that's why I get a little drained when I see that type of shit. And it's, when you watch people do that, you're going, they're not putting their brain into anything. They're not actually thinking critically of the real situation. So I'm gonna do my best to leave it right here and try to cut my rambling. That's another thing that I have an issue with a little bit. I try to keep things less than 30 minutes. You'll find me go over 30 minutes, and you'll definitely find me going over an hour. I don't intend to talk your fucking ear off. This is partly why I'm afraid to do podcasts with other people or to do any type of live thing, because I have to work myself up just to sit in front of a camera and at the same time talking out of place and talking too much. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this. Don't forget to get lost in thought today, even tomorrow. Don't allow the world around you to sway you to follow certain things outside of God. Regardless of your faith or religion, don't allow something outside of God to influence you on what's good or bad. Good and bad, it can be considered something that we're born with, but anybody who has children knows that children are chaotic and impulsive. And they don't understand. They don't generally understand what is truly right and wrong till they're around 10 to 12 years old. Their brains haven't developed enough. They haven't experienced enough. And that's why you'll see kids get really brutal with each other. They'll either bully the shit out of each other, and they usually pick each other apart, whether it's because of their clothes or what they look like. It's the things they see. But they don't generally pick you apart for the things they don't see unless it's an obvious thing. And what I mean by that is, in elementary school, I didn't get picked on a whole lot because of the autistic aspect of things. Because back then, kids are kids, you don't really notice the differences in that sense. But I got picked on because I wasn't one of the rich kids. I was a Kmart kid. I was a Goodwill kid. A Payless shoe kid. Kmart fall apart. If you're over 30, you know what that means. But our experiences help us to evolve as individual people. And when we choose to limit our I guess you could say, our external influences to certain things. And I'm not saying you have to always do bad, just do bad and good things. It's knowing what's good and bad. You should know it by now. But being able to open yourself up more to think from other perspectives and not just how certain things influence other people. How will this ripple out to affect those in the future, our kids or grandkids or great grandkids, etc.? How is this affecting us economically? How is this affecting us individually in our lives? How is this affecting our families? How is this affecting the environment around us? It's putting complete thought into what's going on in all detail. So, take care. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you wish. And you'll see me post at times frequently, and other times there might be a time period where I go a little quiet. And a lot of it's because I'm collecting my thoughts. I'm collecting and processing things around me. So, yeah. Take care. Have a good day. Later.